Assalamualaikum and good day everyone. My name is Nur Faizal Safia binti Mustafa, student ID 2025382471, and this is under subject INC500 in an individual assignment for industrial relations case analysis. So today, I will be presenting an industrial relations case titled Clara Tai Saulan versus Kunya Insurance Malaysia Berhad, reported in 2001 1 MLJ 497. This case was decided by the Malaysian Court of Appeal on 15 January 2001. This case is very important in Malaysia industrial relations law because it discusses several significant issues such as wrongful dismissal, reinstatement of employees, non-compliance with industrial court awards, and the powers of the Industrial Court under Section 56 of the Industrial Relations Act 1967. The main focus of this case is whether an employer can avoid complying with an industrial court reinstatement order and whether the employee's refusal to accept a different position can be considered fresh misconduct. So through this presentation, I will explain the facts of the case, the issues involved, the judgment of the court, and finally my own analysis and critique regarding the decision. Now I will explain the facts of the case. As for the background case, the appellant in this case was Clara Tai Saulan. She worked for Kurnia Insurance Malaysia Berhad as a senior manager in a claim department beginning from 2nd May 1992. However, on 9 June 1995, the respondent company terminated her employment after conducting a domestic inquiry. The company claimed that Clara had committed conduct that was prejudicial to the company's interests. Clara believed that the dismissal was unfair and without just cause or excuse. Therefore, she filed a representation to Director General of Industrial Relations or DGIR under Section 20 of the Industrial Relations Act 1967. Since the dispute could not be resolved through conciliation, the Minister of Human Resources referred the matter to Industrial Court. On 22nd November 1997, the Industrial Court ruled in Clara's favor. The court ordered the respondent to first reinstate Clara to her former position within 1 month, second, preserve her seniority and employment benefits, and third, pay her back wages. This was known as the first Industrial Court Award. However, the major problem in this case started after the award was issued. When Clara reported for duty on 22nd December 1997, the company refused to reinstate her. Instead, she received a letter stating that the company intended to challenge the Industrial Court Award in the High Court. The respondent later applied for certiorari proceedings to quash the first award, but the High Court dismissed the application. Even after losing the challenge, the respondent still did not properly comply with the award. More than a year later, on 5th February 1999, the company wrote to Clara saying that she could return to work. However, the respondent informed her that her original position was no longer vacant because it had already been filled by another employee. Instead, the company attempted to place her into another position. So then Clara rejected the offer because the Industrial Court had specifically ordered the reinstatement to her former position, not another position. The respondent then accused Clara of refusing lawful instructions and terminated her employment again on 24 February 1999. Because of this, Clara filed a complaint under Section 56 of the Industrial Relations Act 1967 for non-compliance of the Industrial Court Award. The Industrial Court ruled her favor again and found that the respondent had never genuinely intended to reinstate her. However, the High Court later quashed the second award and stated that Clara's refusal to report for duty amounted to fresh misconduct, which required a new complaint under Section 20. Clara then appealed to the Court of Appeal. Next, I will explain the timeline and the issues of the case. First, on 2nd May 1992, Clara began working for Quenya Insurance as Senior Manager Claims. And then, on 9 June 1995, she was dismissed after a domestic inquiry. After the matter was referred to the Industrial Court, the court ruled her in her favor on 22nd November 1997 and ordered reinstatement together with back wages. However, when Clara reported for duty on 22nd December 1997, the respondent refused to reinstate her because the company planned to challenge the award in court. Due to this refusal, Clara filed a complaint under Section 56 for non-compliance with the Industrial Court award. On 5th February 1999, the respondent offered Clara another position instead of her former post. Clara refused because the offer did not follow the Industrial Court's order. As a result, the company dismissed her again on 24th February 1999 for allegedly refusing lawful instructions. The Industrial Court later ruled that the respondent had failed to comply with the first award. And finally, on 15 January 2001, the Court of Appeal allowed Clara's appeal and restored the Industrial Court award. So the main legal issues in this case were whether the respondent failed to comply with the first Industrial Court award, or whether reinstatement to another position satisfied the court order, whether Clara's refusal amount to fresh misconduct, and whether the Industrial Court had jurisdiction under Section 56 of the Industrial Relations Act 1967. Now I will be discussing on the judgment of the Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal unanimously allowed Clara's appeal with cause. The judges held that the respondent had clearly failed to comply with the first Industrial Court award. The court emphasizes three important failures by the respondent. First, the company failed to reinstate Clara within 1 month period ordered by the Industrial Court. Second, the company refused to allow Clara to resume her duties when she reported for work on 22nd December 1987. Third, the company failed to pay the back wages within the required period. Justice Abdul Hamid Mohammed stated that this was the clearest form of non-compliance with an Industrial Court award. The Court of Appeal also stressed that reinstatement means restoring the employee to the same exact position previously held before dismissal, and this includes the same status, the same seniority, the same employment benefits, and also the same continuity of service. Therefore, the respondent could not simply place Clara in another position and claim compliance with the award. The judges believe that the company never genuinely intended to obey the reinstatement order because the respondent continuously delayed compliance and attempted to avoid responsibility. Okay, so next, the respondent argued that Clara committed fresh misconduct because she refused to report for duty in February 1999. However, the Court of Appeal rejected this argument completely. Justice Gopal Sriram explained that the alleged misconduct was not truly fresh misconduct because it was directly connected to the respondent's earlier non-compliance with the Industrial Court award. So, the court held that the respondent had already breached the award, the reinstatement offer was defective, and Clara's refusal was understandable because the company failed to follow the actual terms of the award. The Court of Appeal further explained that Section 56 of the Industrial Relations Act 67 exists to ensure compliance with industrial court awards and collective agreements. The judges warned that if employers were allowed to avoid compliance by creating technical arguments, industrial court awards would lose their effectiveness. The Court of Appeal also disagreed with the High Court's decision because forcing Clara to begin a completely new process under Section 20 would only delay justice and weaken employee protection. The judges also state that industrial disputes should be resolved quickly and efficiently in order to preserve industrial harmony. Therefore, the Court of Appeal restored the Industrial Court Award and ruled in favor of Clara. Now I will move on to my analysis and critique of this case. In my opinion, this case is one of the most significant Malaysian industrial relation cases involving reinstatement and non-compliance of Industrial Court Award. The Court of Appeal adopted a very practical and justice-oriented approach. Instead of focusing only on technical legal procedures, the judges focused on the actual conduct of the respondent and whether the company genuinely complied with the award. I believe this was the correct approach because the purpose of industrial relations law is not only to follow procedures, but also to ensure fairness between employers and employees. This case also strengthens the authority of the industrial court. If employers were allowed to ignore or delay industrial court awards, employees would lose confidence in the industrial relations system. The Court of Appeal correctly recognized that reinstatement orders must be obeyed strictly, employers cannot manipulate awards, and employees should not suffer endless litigation because of employer resistance. So this decision also promotes industrial harmony because it discourages employers from abusing their managerial powers. Furthermore, the judgment reinforces the importance of Section 56 of the Industrial Relations Act 1967 as an enforcement mechanism for industrial court awards. Finally, I will conclude my personal critique and conclusion regarding this case. So the respondents' conduct throughout the dispute demonstrated bad faith and lack of respect toward the industrial court process. Even after the industrial court ruled in Clara's favor, the company still delayed reinstatement, refused to return her to her former position, delayed payment of back wages, and later attempted to blame Clara for refusing an improper reinstatement offer. The Court of Appeal viewed this action seriously because they undermined industrial justice and fairness. So, in my opinion, the Court of Appeal made the correct decision because justice would have been denied if Clara had been forced to restart the entire dismissal process again under Section 20. If the High Court's decision had remained, employers could potentially avoid reinstatement orders simply by creating new allegations of misconduct after refusing to comply with awards. This would weaken the industrial court system and unfairly burden employees. Therefore, this case establishes several important principles in Malaysian industrial relations law. Firstly, reinstatement orders must be complied with honestly and completely. Second, employees cannot avoid compliance by offering inferior or different positions. And third, misconduct connected to non-compliance is not necessarily considered fresh misconduct. And lastly, Section 56 provides important protection for employees by allowing enforcement of industrial court awards. Overall, this case remains as an important precedent because it protects employee rights, strengthens the authority of the industrial court, and promotes fairness and industrial harmony within employment relationships. That is all for me. Thank you.